The treatment would cost over 100 grand with barely a 10% chance he'd survive. That's what the doctor said, completely unfazed. My family didn't shed a tear or raise a single objection. They just exchanged glances and left the room. My mother's words were final. Let him go. He's lived long enough. We're not pouring money down a drain. And with that, they were gone. Out the door. Out of our lives. I was 17, penniless, furious, and terrified. But I couldn't walk away. I drained my college fund, signed repayment agreements, and took a janitor's job at the same hospital. Because to me, he wasn't just some old man. He was my grandfather, and I refused to let him die alone. They didn't know he'd live another 7 years, or that I'd become everything they said I'd never be. When he passed quietly at 91, they reappeared, not to grieve him, but for what he might have left behind. The hallway felt too silent. I could hear their footsteps echo long after the elevator shut. I stood there alone, gripping Grandpa's medical file in one hand and my nearly empty wallet in the other. My mother had been the last to go. She didn't even glance at me, just threw a cold look over her shoulder and said, "Stay if you want, but don't come asking us for anything later." Then she disappeared. The nurse shifted awkwardly beside me. "Are you Caroline?" I nodded, throat burning. "We'll need someone to sign the financial liability forms. Insurance covers only about 30%. Without intervention, he won't last the week." I didn't even pause. Not because I wasn't scared. God knows I was terrified. But because the thought of him waking up in pain with no one there broke me. I signed every form they placed before me. The stack felt like a death sentence. I handed over my entire college fund, 11,200 I'd scraped from scholarships and summer jobs. Then I called HR downstairs and begged for work. Any work. By 6 that evening, I was mopping floors in pediatrics. By 10, I was back at his bedside, holding his frail hand as machines beeped around us. He didn't wake for 3 days. When he finally opened his eyes, his voice was thin and shaky, but he whispered first, "You stayed." I nodded through my tears. Always. That night, as he drifted back to sleep, I sat by the window, staring at the city lights beyond. Life outside went on, cars honking, laughter from cafes, glowing signs. But in that dim hospital room, something inside me broke and reformed. They left me with a dying man. But what they really left me with was time. Time to hear his stories, to learn, to become the woman I was never allowed to be around them. They walked away. I walked forward. Doctors had given him a week at best. But a week passed, then 2, then 3. At first, his fingers twitched, his eyelids fluttered, his grip tightened a little at night. Every evening, I read to him. I didn't even know if he could hear me. War novels, Reader's Digest, IKEA manuals, anything to fill the silence with something human. Then one day, spoon feeding him broth, he croaked, "Too salty." I froze. "Grandpa." He blinked, then smiled weakly. "You've always been awful at seasoning." I laughed through tears. Best complaint I ever heard. His recovery picked up slowly but steadily. Soon he could sit up, then speak longer, then walk again with my help. Doctors called it an anomaly. I called it proof love beats statistics. We moved into a tiny 2-room flat across from the hospital. Paint peeling, heater rattling, sharing a bathroom with 2 tenants. But we were together. I worked hospital shifts by day and studied for my GED online at night. Grandpa taught me everything he knew, not just algebra or wiring, but life. "Most people throw broken things away," he said once, handing me a soldering iron. "But if you understand how it works, you can rebuild it." That goes for machines and people too. Those nights in that flickering kitchen weren't just lessons in repair. They taught me worth. One evening as I fixed our microwave switch, he said, "You've got the mind of an engineer." I scoffed. More like a janitor avoiding burnt soup. But inside, that compliment lit a fire. He wasn't meant to live, but he did. And because he did, I learned to live too. My family's silence became permanent. At first, I thought they'd come around. But then my mother closed the joint bank account. The family phone plan cut off. Her last text read, "You made your choice. Don't expect anything from us again." No explanation. Just gone. I cried for days. Not just out of pain, but because they didn't even miss me. Grandpa saw it in my forced smiles. He never spoke ill of them. He just said, "Some only love when it's easy. You're not like them." Money ran tight. I worked double shifts, cleaning nights, and managing supplies by day. Studied for exams between mopping floors. Skipped meals so Grandpa ate better. He hated that, so he made me promise to charge for my repair work. By month 3, we had a shoebox labeled Repair Fund. By month 6, neighbors came knocking with broken lamps, toasters, irrigation timers. We never advertised, but word spread. Caroline and her grandpa, they don't just fix things, they care. One night, while repairing a toaster, Grandpa said, "You don't need their name to build your own." I looked at him. Whose name? He just twisted wires in silence. That night, I understood. He wasn't preparing me for revenge. He was building my independence. That year, I earned my GED. The next, I got into a part-time STEM program for women. I almost didn't apply, thinking I didn't belong. But Grandpa told me, people who belong aren't born into rooms. They build doors. So I built mine and stepped through. 7 years. That's how long since they abandoned us. 7 years since I signed those hospital forms with trembling hands. 7 years since I became the girl who stayed. And in those years, I became Caroline Green. Not just the girl with a soldering iron and mop, but a fixer of broken systems. A woman with a name that meant something beyond their rejection. It began in our garage. Grandpa and I built an emergency fall sensor prototype. Wearable, simple, cheap. He even fake fell around the kitchen to test it. We pitched it to a clinic, got a tiny grant, then a second, then 2 interns working for coffee and hope. We called it Safe Step. By year 5, we were an LLC. By year 6, we partnered with 3 elder care centers. By year 7, our devices protected over 10,000 seniors. Grandpa was our advisor, mascot, test subject, and my anchor. Every choice, every design taped to the wall. He was there. Success meant nothing without remembering who we were. The local paper did a feature. From hospital janitor to CEO. I didn't send it to my mother. Didn't need to. Word spread among family who once called me foolish for staying with a dying man. I didn't gloat. Didn't answer the cousin's email asking, "Hey, how have you been?" Because my worth didn't come from them. It came from every night I didn't quit, every tear I swallowed, every "you stayed," he whispered. At 91, Grandpa's health declined again, gently this time. He still sipped his morning coffee, reviewed my code, and smiled when I entered. But we knew this time was final. On a quiet Tuesday morning, I found him in his chair by the window, the one he called his thinking spot. Book closed on his lap, half-finished tea by his side, and a peaceful smile resting on his face. No machines, no alarms, just peace. I held his hand for a long time before calling hospice. Not out of confusion, but because I wasn't ready for a world without his voice. The funeral was small. Neighbors, a few colleagues, the nurse who called him her kindest patient. As I stood by the chapel door thanking guests, I heard sharp heels on gravel. I turned and froze. There they were, my mother, uncle, aunt, cousin in his sleek suit looking like he'd walked into a board meeting. My mother spread her arms. "Caroline, sweetheart, you've grown so much." I stood still, silent. She tried again. "I know things got complicated back then, but we're family. Your grandfather would want us together today." I wanted to scream, to ask if she remembered leaving me like trash in that hallway. But I just gestured to the chapel. "He's inside. You have 5 minutes." After the service, she approached me with her tight smile. "So about the estate," she said lightly. "We assume there's a will." "There is," I replied flatly. Her smile widened. "Wonderful. We'll discuss divisions soon." That's when I truly spoke. "You left him to die alone, Mom. 7 years, you never called, never asked if he survived. You're only here because you think he was worth something." She blinked, then snapped. "Don't be dramatic. We're his children. He wouldn't cut us out." I looked down at the sealed will. You'll find out tomorrow. But know this, he wasn't as forgiving as I am. The next morning, I arrived at the lawyer's office early. Not out of nerves, but preparation. Mr. Alton greeted me softly. He'd known Grandpa since our first safe step patent. The room smelled of polished wood. I sat at the end of the table. Before me, a sealed envelope in Grandpa's wooden box, unopened until now. Minutes later, they entered, faces tight with expectation. Mr. Alton cleared his throat. This is Walter H. Green's final testament. He nodded to me. I opened the box. Inside, Grandpa's pocket watch, a flash drive, and a folded note. Mr. Alton plugged in the drive. Grandpa's recorded voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, I've passed on. And if the people I think are here are actually here, I'm not surprised. My mother shifted uncomfortably. My cousin rolled his eyes. Let me be direct, Grandpa continued. I, Walter Green, leave my entire estate, safe step shares, property, finances, and intellectual rights, to my granddaughter, Caroline Green. Everything. My uncle's jaw dropped. My mother leaned forward and raged. This is fraud. She manipulated him. Mr. Alton held up notarized medical evaluations, confirming Grandpa's full mental capacity. My cousin stood abruptly. She was a janitor. She lived off him. Grandpa's video continued calmly. To those who say she took from me, I say she gave me 7 more years. She gave me mornings, coffee, and meaning. You gave me silence. She built a life. You abandoned one. My mother paled. No one spoke. Mr. Alton folded the will. There are no other beneficiaries. Any challenge voids inheritance rights. Walter Green's wishes are final. They filed out silently. But my mother paused outside, venom in her voice. You think this makes you better? You tricked a dying man. I stared at her. You left him. For 7 years, you didn't care if he lived. My uncle barked. We're his children. I looked him dead in the eyes. What did that ever mean to you besides a payday? My cousin hissed. We'll go public. Say you manipulated him. I smiled calmly. Try it. I'll release his full testimony, medical reports, and every journal he wrote about what you did or didn't do when he needed you. Silence fell, but I wasn't done. I handed my mother one final note. She opened it. 3 words in Grandpa's clear handwriting. You walked away. Her hand shook. She crumpled the note, eyes burning with shame she couldn't erase. I turned to leave. You lost his money, but worse, you lost him. And that happened long before he died. They watched me step into the sunlight. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt complete. Not because I won, but because I survived. Because I stayed. Because I built something beautiful from what they left behind. And in the end, he chose me. Not just in his will, but in his time, his faith, and his quiet, unbreakable love. 6 months later, the house was silent, but never lonely. I kept his kettle, his chair by the window, and wound his pocket watch every morning at 7 like a promise. But my next move wasn't mourning, it was building. I launched the Green Foundation, named for him, the man who grew hope from neglect. Its mission was simple: teach technical skills and provide emotional support to teens and elders abandoned like us. We started small, 3 laptops, 2 folding tables, and a community center room. But when our first student built her own fall sensor and squealed, "It works," I felt his spirit alive in that spark. A year later, we opened a permanent workshop. 5 years on, one of our scholarship girls became a lead developer at Safe Step. At her graduation, she said, "I never had a real family, but your foundation made me feel like I mattered." I handed her Grandpa's favorite wrench. You do matter. Don't ever forget that. I still live in the same home. The company is bigger, but my life stays simple. No mansions, no luxury cars. Just purpose. Because true wealth is the extra 7 years I got with him. It's every life we've repaired. It's the girl I used to be and the woman I became because I stayed when no one else would. Sometimes I think back to that day in the hospital when they left us behind, how shattered and helpless I felt standing alone with no plan, no support, no family to call my own. But then I think of everything that happened after. The late nights studying beside his bed, the smell of solder and coffee in that tiny kitchen, the sound of his quiet laughter as I learned to fix the unfixable. I think about Safe Step, the neighbors who trusted us, the foundation students who now carry his lessons forward. I think about the mornings I still wake up and wind his pocket watch at 7 a.m. sharp, just like he did, hearing his voice in my head, reminding me that broken doesn't mean worthless. It just means waiting for someone brave enough to mend it. And every time I close my eyes and feel that grief tug at my chest, I remember his words. You stayed. In those 2 words, he gave me a purpose bigger than any inheritance or family approval. They left us behind thinking I would drown without them. But I rose instead. I built my own legacy on the foundation of his love and his faith in who I could become. I didn't just survive those 7 years. I grew. I learned. I rebuilt every broken piece of myself into something they never saw coming. And in the quietest moments when the world feels heavy and the memories threaten to drag me back into that hospital hallway, I whisper back to him with every part of my being, always, Grandpa. Always.